100% reached out to profiles like that a few times, but there's always a catch. And the catch is that whichever individual I'm reaching out to has in some way connected with me through another medium. If I'm going through LinkedIn and I'm looking for profiles to send, I'm probably not going to give too much of a look into.
Hi, I'm here with Daniel Erasmus. Daniel, could you please tell me a bit about yourself?
Hi, Nicola. Good to be back. Hi, guys. My name is Daniel Erasmus. I'm an ex test specialist recruiter, currently working for Udacity as a transformation strategist. And I'm here to talk about software testing recruitment today and kind of lift the lid on some questions that you may have about working with recruiters in that space.
All right, sweet. To start off with, what are some good questions to ask a recruiter when you're at the screening stage? Well, first off, what is the screening stage? Sorry, just in case people don't know.
No, it's absolutely fine. The screening stage will be the first stage. So, say we found a CV, looks good, checks out, or we found a profile that aligns with the job that we're working. The screening stage would be the first line in the sand. Essentially, that's where we give you a call, or we set up a meeting, and we're there to talk through your CV, your experience, what it is you're looking for, and we generally vet you for the potential incoming process, or the interview process that you'd be going through to if you're successful.
So when you say like preparing you for like the interview process, does that mean that you can ask the recruiter questions about what to expect next during the screening stage when you're speaking to the recruiter?
Absolutely. I think that's actually quite an important thing. I mean, further to your former question, that would be one of the things I would do is use questioning to try and expose what it is to expect, try and manage your expectations and get a handle on, what is to be expected. I think that's a very, very good line of questioning.
What other questions do you think people could like would you recommend people direct at the recruiter at this stage?
I think as a tester, or to be honest, anyone, I think specialisms are important. Recruitment is a very encompassing role. There's so many moving parts to it, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and a lot of involvement in the community if you want to be really good at it. So I think one of the key things that I would try to establish as soon as possible is how much experience does that recruiter have with software testers? Are they, is that part of a vertical that they work? Is it a case of, oh, they hire for testers and developers, or are they just exclusively working with testers? And what is their experience there? How many testers do they place? Like how established in the market are they? Because at the end of the day, they're going to be asking you questions to try and ascertain your value within the marketplace. You need to be asking them questions to try and ascertain theirs as well. You do want to be knowing that you're, getting represented by someone who is credible, who's going to be taking you to the right opportunities, and who's going to be helping you cast a wider net in the right ways.
Okay. Now let's say you're talking to a recruiter as dive deeper into the asking questions. Sorry, my voice. Um so for a specific company, for a specific role, and the recruiter has, doing the screening, and you said how you could ask the recruiter about what to expect. Could you be a bit more specific? Like, could you ask about pay range, and could the recruiter give an answer there? Could you ask about like the exact next steps? Because I know some application processes is like 4 interviews, some is like 2 interviews, take home, 1 interview. Like, can you give details as to the sorts of nice, juicy info that a recruiter can share?
So what normally happens at that stage is we'll want to vet the candidate before we're giving away the names. So normally what you'll notice this pattern, and this is standard, and it's not something that can be changed just because of the way that we're paid and the way that it's all set up and the way the competition happens between recruiters, and the way that people talk on the market. We want to vet someone and build a relationship with you before we tell you who we're going to send you to, because chances are we'll get to the end of the conversation and it might not just be one. It might be like, oh, well, actually, I think there might be a fit for this place as well and this other place. And a good recruiter will take you through everything, find out all about you, understand your expectations, manage your expectations, And then they'll take you through who they want to send you to and why. And then they'll ask you if that sounds good, and then normally follow that up by sending over some information.
In terms of the questions asked in an interview, what's the difference between the types of questions you'd expect from a recruiter versus what you'd expect from a hiring manager later down the track?
I would say from a good specialist recruiter, there shouldn't be a huge difference. I mean, obviously, you can't expect them to be as technical as a hiring manager. They're not going to be doing the job. You're not going to be. I've never met a recruiter who was also a head of test. But they should also be skilled and knowledgeable enough in their chosen discipline to be able to ask you pretty concise technical questions around it. They should know the difference between white box, black box. They should know what exploratory testing is, and they should be asking you questions to try and ascertain what your capabilities are, and be able to sort of back that up a bit. That is an unfair expectation for everyone because a lot of people might be new. That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. Some people are very, very good and have only been in a job for a short amount of time, so maybe they haven't had the chance to pick up that knowledge yet. But generally speaking, you want to look out for those kind of questions because that is a sign that you're speaking to someone who is obviously knowledgeable and probably quite established. Um, what I would also say is, time mitigation, or like at least risk mitigation is a huge part of your job as a recruiter. Um, so yeah, time is money for the people who will be running the interviews. If you're successful with us and we pass you through and they want to have a look at you, um, you know that's money that they're putting on the line when they're setting time aside. And if you're not going to be suitable for the role, then that then comes back to the recruiter. They often get the blame. That not always in the better relationships it doesn't happen, but sometimes it does, and that's something we try to avoid. So we look for things like, you know is this person leaving their last role for a good reason? Are they looking for something permanent, or are they really looking for a contract role and maybe looking for somewhere to sort of tie themselves over until they find a contract role? Because I mean, ultimately, that also then reflects bad on us if we're sending people in and then they leave a few weeks later.
I want to touch, sorry, you said something that caught my attention regarding leaving for a good reason. Can you give me some examples of what you see as a good reason, as well as what may cause recruiters to when they're eyeing up or when they're listening to someone for their reasons of leaving?
Yeah, sorry. I think maybe good reason is not the right wording. I think having a concise explanation for why you're leaving, having like a solid explanation. Because I mean, stuff happens. Like every now and then, you might go and work somewhere where it's not suitable. And like I personally have, I've placed people who've been fired from a previous role, and then have gone on into the next place where I've placed them, and they have done amazingly. And some of these guys are still in those roles. They're doing incredible, and that's really, really good to see. You know. Equally, people have come out with like, you know I guess less of an explanation. Sorry, I've just lost my whole train of thought
No,
there.
no, I'm just curious because with the good reason, I've always thought that it's good to move to something, not move away from something. But then I also know I've had the privilege of not working in such a bad environment where I was forced to ever leave a place. Um, but then I have heard, obviously, good reason is, classic would be if you move countries. I mean, that's like textbook almost that you can never fault someone. Like that can't look bad if you had to move countries because there was an opportunity for your partner, for example. But then, um, like I don't know, say this isn't necessarily with leaving, but how about if someone switches jobs every 10 months, like or less than every year? Would that
Yeah, well, that
give
would be
you
something
time
that
to
I'd
pause?
invest. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. That would definitely be something that I'd investigate.
Mm.
And you'd want to kind of, I guess, plug into that and really sort of dig deep and try and understand why. I'd want to have I'd want to have a list of motivations for each of those changes before I'd be comfortable sending someone forward, just because I know for a fact that that would be immediately brought up the moment I sent that CV through. I would send that through, and the manager would get in touch with me, and immediately bring that up, and I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I would need to be able to explain why. And I wo explain, that this person's not just going to do the exact same pattern with them and why, you know. So I guess, yeah, it's about getting a good understanding of these things. And I mean, there's normally a reason for stuff, but there are also people that will use the nature of the tech industry and the scarcity of skills as an opportunity to kind of job hop and try and accrue more and more money in each place. I mean, doing that, I mean, I'm not going to say that that's morally wrong for you to try and get as much money out of it as you can and leverage your skills, right? That you've worked hard to develop. But you are also leaving people in the lurch when you do that, and causing a little bit of an issue there. And also, I guess the risk that you have to accept if you are going to choose to do that is that not everyone is going to be willing to take you after a while, because they are going to start seeing that pattern, and they are going to go, oh well, actually no, we do want someone who's going to be here for a few years.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I've seen a few profiles like that, but then I was curious as to, from your perspective, whether or not that was something to be wary of, because it's like when it comes to career advice, I read like career books and other stuff, and they go, oh, the best way to get a pay rise is to switch jobs. When you got that narrative as well, that kind of is trying to push for something else. Yeah. Now, my next question is: have you ever reached out to candidates on LinkedIn who did not have detailed profiles? So, if I was say detailed profiles, we'll use my profile as an example. So, something like there's no summary. They just have like the job title and the company name and their experience, and then just like copy paste with different company names. Would you reach out to someone with a profile like that? And if so, why? If not, why not?
100% reached out to profiles like that a few times, but there's always a catch, and the catch is that whichever individual I'm reaching out to has in some way connected with me through another medium. If I'm going through LinkedIn and I'm looking for profiles to send, I'm probably not going to give too much of a look into a profile like that unless the in within the minuscule amount of information on there is something that is deeply of interest to me. There's been times where I was looking for very specific skill sets, and out of sheer luck, I would find one of these almost blank profiles, and the one thing that they had in there was the tool that I was looking for. And oftentimes I'd get in touch with them, and we'd just laugh at how barren their profile is, and how how actually they have so much like such rich tapestry of work behind them. And then when you get a look at their CV afterwards, because normally what will happen is we'll have a chat over LinkedIn. I'll ask them to send their number and their CV, and we'll talk through their CV, and it'll just be more often than not, I've received these amazing CVs by people with absolutely empty profiles. And I can't help but feel that if they had just spent, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 minutes sprucing it up a little bit, just adding some of that excellent experience there, it would just do absolute wonders.
If say someone doesn't have any details on their profile, but then we want them to have a little bit, like the absolute bare minimum of what would be, say, good enough to be somewhat appealing to a recruiter, which areas of their LinkedIn profile do you like actually would you be looking at? Because there'd be some like maybe you don't care about some sections that are like further down. So what do you actually care about when you're looking?
I mean, I'll flat out say that more is always better, and the more fleshed out it is, the better. Especially if it's genuine skills and um, not just like waffle, not just like padding. Uh, but if it's absolute bare minimum, then have your list of previous experiences and your tech stack. And that'll at least tell me if you're a technical fit. And then from there, we can decide about the rest on the phone, and we can talk through that. And I can look at your CV, and I can go, yeah, okay, this is going to be a fit, and I think this is going to be like a good move for you. Maybe the culture's a good fit or that kind of thing. But we're flying blind at that point until we have the conversation. It helps so much to have a fleshed out profile, because I mean, another thing that people don't really think about, especially when you're coming from a recruiter, is that your CV gets sent, but normally, normally they'll then look at the CV that we've sent them, and then they'll go and have a look at your LinkedIn profile as well to corroborate. And it's not just us that are looking at it. The hiring managers are going to be looking through that as well, and that's huge for them. So I mean, like, not everyone is Nicola Lindgren, but if you can populate your profile with as much as possible, you don't have to be super active on LinkedIn, but if you I don't know, if you've done any courses, stick them on there. If you've done a project that you were proud of, or like that was a monumental point in your career, there's a project section on that page. I barely ever see those occupied on testers' profiles. So that's another good one. Fill your skills up and ask anyone who's worked with you to please go and click the button on there and give you a point for it. There's so many little things that you can do to just
So
make your profile.
are you talking about those endorsements when you have a skill and then
Yeah,
like let's say I have a skill for test cases, for example, and then Sibon
yeah.
can go plus sign that okay, so you pay attention to that.
So it's
Is
not
it
even so much that we pay attention to that, but when we search, those
mm,
come up in our keywords. So, if you're searching through, because we use a search tool called, sorry, used to use a search tool called LinkedIn Recruiter, which
mm,
obviously just like it's an add-on to LinkedIn, which allows us to search through people's profiles for candidates as a hiring manager. And once you put something into that keyword search, we use Boolean, it'll bring up anything that's written on there that aligns with what we're looking for. So if I'm
okay.
looking for a
So
particular tech,
I, I'd like to like use an example and I'd like to use my profile as an example to talk
sure,
through some points. So like
sure.
in my skills, I think I have a skills section somewhere. So let's say you search for quality management, but then I have one endorsement for quality management. Does that mean that I would rank lower in your search results on LinkedIn Recruiter compared to someone who has, say, 10?
No, no, because we search on Boolean. I mean, it's more for like, I've got to be honest, we never look at the amount of points that you have for each of those, unless it's like really high. Like if I went onto someone's profile and they had like 100 points or 100 endorsements for, Cypress automation or exploratory testing, then I'd be pretty impressed. And I'd obviously be like, okay, that'd be a notable thing that I would bring up and be like, okay, what's this about?
Yeah,
How
wait,
good
because it's
are
like
you?
you've had 100 people who've bothered to click that
Yeah,
button. And
no,
it's not
exactly.
that because you could have technically worked with 100 people who've witnessed those skills
Yeah.
if like you've been in consulting, for example, but the chance of that many people actually taking an action on LinkedIn is lower. But then like so you touched on skills and like so then I guess the endorsements part can help.
So endorsements, something I want to say is I worry that people aren't putting endorsements up or aren't putting the skills up for endorsement because they may be worried that they're not going to get enough people clicking them. And I just want to say, like, put them up. It doesn't really matter if it's got no endorsements or if it's got 10 or 20. It makes no difference to us when we're looking at profile. If anything, it's just sometimes people will forget to put a skill in their about section, but then they'll have it on the endorsements. And then I'll ask them, they'll go, oh, yeah, no, I used that a couple of years back. And I'll go, oh, well, that's actually a really cool piece of kit. And I've got a client who's desperate for someone with it. Do you still know how to use it? And if they go, yes, then I'm like, cool, let's talk about
I
it.
never actually never thought about removing things that I may no longer be able to do. Huh.
Yeah. That was another thing I wanted to go into is real important to keep all the skills on there, things that you are like comfortable talking about, I guess. Same with your CV. In our last video we talked about CVs, about skills on there. Super important that anything on there you're actually comfortable enough talking to about and potentially being able to perform at, because you might get pulled up to do a test on it at some point, or just expected to be capable with it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, the funny thing is, I think I used to be like really really good at German, like basically fluent, and then Swedish ruined my German, and then I get not a bunch, but I get approaches from German recruiters or Swiss recruiters in German, so I understand it, and I'm just like, oh man, like I can't, my German's no longer good enough to answer answer them and say that I'm not interested. So, but yeah, I should actually the language part I should probably update. So in LinkedIn, you have like I don't know if it's called a headline, but like my one is quality engineering manager in Turkey, author starting your software testing career. And I've seen two variations of this. I've seen one where people just do job title. So,
Mm,
and then two, when people go, I solve testing problems or I help teams with quality, that sort of thing.
yeah.
They don't mention a title and they don't mention a company. Does that matter?
Um, on the grand scale of things, if you're out there, we'll find you. But when I'm looking through a list of names, the ones that come up, because sometimes when you pull up a list of names, you'll get the first portion of their header on the list. If your header starts with your job title and then a little bit about you and where you work, that is pretty useful and pretty eye-catching. So, I mean, while it's not the be all and end all, it is a good way to slide to the top of the pile and catch someone's eye earlier, I'd say.
So when okay, so from your perspective, say before like you're searching and you see a bunch of names and pictures, then what you're seeing is picture, name, and then that headline thing or the first half of the headline. You're not seeing any other information about them at this point. At that point, you have to click into their profile.
Unless LinkedIn Recruiters had a bunch of updates since I last used it, then no, there'll be some brief information, but most of it won't need to come up because those names will be there because of a search I've just put in. That'll usually be quite specific. Um, However, those searches will still pull up like, when you get to the tail end of the list, you do start getting other profiles. So you'll get profiles for like BAs and people who aren't even necessarily like within the testing spectrum who would probably get kind of annoyed if you hit them up talking about testing roles and they're looking for something else. So something that really helps is when you do see confirmation, because I mean, you got to put yourself in a recruiter's shoes at that point. When you're on LinkedIn, you're not on the phone. You don't really feel like you're doing as much outbound because you're reading a lot and you're kind of scrolling through and clicking on things and trying to get through as much information as quickly as possible, basically. So anything that you can do to draw people to your profile, like having your job title in your header, that'll make a big difference for sure. It's still not crucial. Like ultimately, we're gonna pull up your profile anyway, and we'll get to you if you're there and you've got the skills. Like we'll find you. But yeah, sometimes I've got 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I better go check LinkedIn, and I'm gonna pop on there, and I'm gonna pick the first six profiles that I can see and give them a really good read through and take their name down and see if I can find them on our database, kind of thing. You know.
Going back to the example of my profile, like I do want to provide the viewer some specific things about, say, what you like and then what you don't or what you think could be like optimized. Um, what do you think people could learn from my profile? And then what do you think um, could be optimized? And like, because I guess maybe this question depends on like the sorts of role that you may be considering. Let's
Yeah.
say my previous role, which was I was a senior QA engineer, also QA manager, like dual hat, um, different automation technologies, I guess. So a
Hmm.
role like that,
Yeah.
then how does my LinkedIn profile look in relation to that sort of role you'd have in mind?
Your LinkedIn profile looks like your role. I'll tell you that for free. So it's very much soft skill oriented. It's very much about leadership and mentorship, and you kind of show through that, and you highlight very well your literature that you've released and the talks that you're doing and your presence on LinkedIn. There's loads of good points of like how to contact me, where is my blog, that kind of thing. So really, really good on that. If you were looking for, say, you were going to move back to your previous role, key changes that I would make is I would put a little in like bullet points within your about section. I'd put a little skill bracket, so just bullet points of just like your tech stack proficiencies. So, maybe I think I saw Java on your profile earlier. So like Java is your OP and then a Selenium, Cucumber for BDD, whatever API tools are used. If you've done any non-functional testing, having that on there as well can be a kicker if you're looking to get back into a more technical role. Um, how good are you at black box testing? How good are you at white box testing? And what is your experience within a shift left environment? I mean, like how good are you at exploratory testing? Does that tie into your automation, that kind of thing?
But even if I do mention most of the skills that you were talked about in like courses further down in my profile, and also in the skills section, there's
Mm.
still value in like explicitly mentioning these things in the about section. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
I'd go a step further and say the absolute best case would be if you had bullet points and then maybe a little bracket, either a little paragraph above or below it, where you're just talking about like giving some context to the tooling. So pair programmed with the developers in my team using exploratory testing to help us preempt bugs and create more accurate and increased coverage for automation tests written in Java, with Selenium automation framework, Cucumber for BDD, or, you know, JS with Cypress or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Having those kind of specifics are really, really useful because, I mean, then we can look at that and that's all of that adds to what we're saying. Because, I mean, you got to remember, I keep saying we like I'm still doing it. Um, maybe I missed a little bit. No,
Mm,
when you are or when you're a recruiter and you're looking at this kind of thing, a lot of what
mm,
you're taking from it is how can I big this person up to the hiring manager? And you do that a little bit. Your first time looking through a profile, that's the first time you start doing that in your head. You start already kind of putting the pieces together of how you would sell someone to one of your clients. And then once you've had them on the phone, you've given them the go ahead, they've given you the go ahead, they've sent their CV, and you're both happy to submit. One of the first things I'll do is I'll go back. If I saw a lot of information, I'll go back onto their profile and I'll take what I saw in there, combine it with my notes, so that there's clear, cohesion between what we're saying. And I'll call up the hiring manager and I'll be like, Mrs. Hiring Manager or Mr. Hiring Manager, like, if you look at their profile, you can see this project at the bottom where they executed X, Y, Z, and this is the result that it had on the overall team. They demolished testing as a bottleneck for the delivery process, and stuff like that is super relevant to the people who are hiring for these. And good recruiters are gonna do that. And if you offer them the opportunity to do that, then it can be absolutely devastating and makes a really big difference in your success chances.
yeah. And like one thing I had read about to remember with working recruiters, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that they're on your side. Like they want it to work, or they want like not even just like with like interviews, but like the recruiter wants to find someone who will succeed in the interview and get the
Yeah.
role, and the hiring manager wants to find someone like ultimately assuming that the role is right for you and you're
Mhm.
suitable, then technically everyone wants the same, probably wants the same thing. It's just, yeah.
Everyone's the same thing. It's all about making it as easy for each other as possible. The best relationships I've had with clients are with those who were always open with me about it, what it was they were actually looking for, what it was they were actually worried about in terms of both the candidate and in terms of our process. Because if you're transparent, like I said this in the last call, like we're only as useful as the information we have. And that was always the thing was as long as people were transparent with me, it allowed me to be transparent to the next person, and then you know you get so much more cohesion out of that. And yeah, everyone is basically just wants the role to be closed. They want to get the right person in as quickly as possible, and they want everybody to be happy. So the best way for that to happen is for everyone to just give each other as much information as possible.
This sorry, when you're like we're working as a recruiter before, or
Hmm.
just like, and then maybe in general, is the recruiter usually hired by the company, or are they usually hired by like the individual? Like how, like who is like the customer of the recruiter, if that makes any sense?
The customer is the client. So the client. And sorry, I guess that doesn't actually answer the question at all. The
No,
client
it
is
does. No,
normally
because
hiring.
it's like well, I just think about like say you're, this sounds like buying a house. You
Hmm.
do have two customers, but there is one in particular that you're like serving. So
Yeah,
are you serving the company? Like, or do
yeah.
recruiters tend to
Well,
serve the company or the individuals?
yeah, so you've got a duty of care to both. And, obviously financially, your obligation is towards the hiring manager and the company that is hiring, because at the end of the day, they're going to pay you the fee that goes to your company. but you've got an obligation to the individual because one, if you're not there because you care about getting people where they need to go, you probably aren't enjoying the job very much. A lot of the satisfaction you get is because you care about helping people. It's a big part of the role. And the best recruiters are the ones who stay in the business and the ones who do really, really well, the ones who really put attention to detail and focus and care into that. Because it's crucial, man. It's everything. Um, so I guess, yeah, it goes both ways. Also, your reputation is massively at stake if you're not looking after your candidates. So you've got an obligation of care to them, but again, you've also, at the end of the day, the client is also paying the bills, so they're keeping the lights on, and you want their business, you want them to continue to work with you, and without them, you're not of much use to the candidate. So yeah, it goes both ways for sure. I think it's surprisingly for a one-sided transactional relationship, in terms of one person providing the money to one. Because I mean, just FYI, as a message, as a just a standard, if you're a candidate, you should not be paying recruiters. You're being scammed. Like, that's not a thing. We don't charge candidates. Um, but yeah, so it's a pretty even split, I'd say. But we have a duty of care both ways.
My last my last question is around cover letters. What role do cover letters play in the application process, and how important are they?
So honestly, when I was recruiting, cover letters were not that important to me. I'd always end up reading a few, but generally, what I found over the course of my years was that most of them were fairly blanket. They were fairly kind of generic, and they were kind of seen as, I think it's kind of seen as a bit of like an archaic thing. People are expected they expect to have to do that, and I mean, obviously, when you're applying for jobs, a lot of a lot of the portals won't let you send your application through unless you put a cover letter in. Um, so I think there's this expectation that you have to. I would say that there is a place for cover letters. It's normally for places like if you're applying for somewhere that isn't marketing themselves as hiring, like they're not really pushing that they're hiring, but you suspect they might have a need, or they're just really interesting to you. It's a really cool company. You've always wanted to work there, and you want to try your luck. By all means, write them a cover letter and tell them why. Tell them why this is so important to you that you're applying, and why you want to hear everything. Um, why you want the chance at least to get involved with them and what you think you'll bring, and then put that with your CV. But with recruiters, I would say honestly, just send us an email or a message on LinkedIn. If there's anything remarkable about your skill set that you think would be really interesting to us, or about your experience that you think is really in line with a job that you've seen us advertising, type a little bit up about that, like literally a little couple paragraphs, and then attach your CV. And yeah, just suggest we have a chat sometime, and chances are you'll get a response for that. I wouldn't say you need to type up a letter.
And if, say, because you're saying how you could like reach out to a recruiter with a message, do you have any tips for someone on how to craft a message to a recruiter? The reason I'm asking this question is like I get a lot of messages saying, "Hi, I'm looking for a job. Do you have any?"
Hmm.
Like literally like that, very or
Yeah,
very very similarly worded. I don't know
yeah.
if you get those sorts of similar messages, but like
I
how
have.
can someone stand out so that you are more inclined to help them or better um, able to help them?
So obviously, as I'm no longer a recruiter, it's hard for me to say and to speak for the entire industry. But when I was doing it, something that would stand out to me was when people would message me, and they would mention a job, and they'd ask me if I had time to speak. Which is, it's a very, very small courtesy, but like, you are incredibly busy as a recruiter, as everyone is, of course. But those little courtesies go a long way. Um, and yeah, just saying like, hi, do you have time to speak? Do you have like 10 minutes for us to chat? I'm really interested in this job you've advertised, and then attach a CV, something like that. It's quite hard really to stand out with your LinkedIn DMs. So I'd say that'd be the way to go, or even just try and strike up a conversation. Try and lead onto the talk about jobs, but start with just a convo about something. Check someone, if you're interested in working with a recruiter, check their profile. mention something there, and I mean, generally speaking, we're quite chatty individuals, so like chances are you'll get off into have a little bit of a natter, and then you can go into, oh, by the way, I am looking. Here's my CV. This is what I do, and I'm interested in that job you posted, and that's more than enough.
So thanks heaps for your time. And if someone wanted to hear more about you or get in contact with you or anything like that, how could they go about it?
Absolutely, feel free to pop me a message on my LinkedIn. I'm not always going to be, obviously, as I said, very very busy with Udacity at the moment. So not always going to be able to reply super promptly, but I will always do my best to answer any questions and be as useful as possible. So if you have any questions, you want any help, you want any insight into this kind of thing, you want any recommendations for good recruiters, I still know a lot of people in the industry who are amazing at it, then let me know. And yeah, I'm happy to forward you to the right places and make suggestions.
Sweet. Thanks heaps for your time, Daniel.
Nicola, thank you for having me back. It's been lovely.
Bye.
Bye bye.